So I've been busy working on these things. That one, this one. And I've been neglecting my street car, which is a nice S14, original owner, SC, leather interior. I mean, this thing's super clean. It's really dirty right now because it's been neglected. It's on jack stands. It's real dusty, but I'm gonna get cracking on it. I wanna put some nice Kansei rims on it because Kansei sent me some brand new wheels for these bad boys, which means I'm gonna take some of the old spares from my S14 and repurpose them for my street car. It had some cool wheels on there before, but nothing like some nice Kansei KNPs that are really lightweight. Got some work on my hands to try to make it fit on this thing. Obviously it's got the stock body, stock rear quarters, stock front fenders, and we're gonna make those big wheels and some decent sized tires fit on this thing. This thing's already got Wisefab in the rear. It's dialed. It's got some 442 field coilovers on there, and that makes it so the rear geometry is really good. There's not much camber gain, not much toe in. The toe in is actually adjustable, so why not put the best of the best out on there. The front end's pretty much stock. It just has field 442 coilovers on there, and stock knuckle, stock everything else. Let's get these wheels fitted on there and see what we got to do to make them fit. Front wheels off the S14, and we're gonna repurpose those because they've had a season on them. They're a little scratched up because I run into things or people run into me. So here they are. It's dismounted, and I usually run a 265 on that car. We're gonna run a 235 on the street car, so it's gonna be quite a bit smaller, stretched a little bit, but hey, it's a much slower, much less powerful car. It's gonna need less tires, so we're gonna mount this bad boy up. Ooh, these are nice and lightweight because they're flow form, which means they're nice and light and super strong. Let's get this tire on there. Woo. All right, let's pull this thing in. Oh, it's hot in here. She sat for a while, but I got faith. Yeah. Man, this thing's so solid. Right onto the lift. Check this out. Oh yeah. Yuck. I lower the car back down. It's on this ramp, which is nice and slippery actually, so as the suspension compresses, the camber could settle and go right into the spot that it's going to be at after the car rolls basically. So we're actually at -2 degrees and 40 minutes, and visually it looks pretty good. And actually we got really good fitment here. So the reason I'm doing all of this without the springs in there, without the ride height completely dialed in, is I'm kind of ballparking where I'm gonna have the wheel at. So that's why I'm starting out with camber, because camber is really gonna determine how far out the rim's sticking out and how far the tire's digging into the fender. And that will basically allow us to get an understanding of how much we gotta roll the fender, and everything's gonna be based around that on this car. So I want the ride height at a particular spot, the tire basically being flush with the fender. That's like something that I absolutely want. I want pretty decent fitment, meaning I don't want the wheel sunk in. I want the rim basically a little bit further out than the actual fender, because we got a tire that's stretched and it tucks right under it. And I don't want too much negative camber, because I want to be able to drive this thing on long distances and not wear out my nice expensive Falcon 615K tires that are nice and sticky and soft. So I'm really happy with where the camber is at. That is the ride height I'm going to stick with. So now we got to start rolling that fender. We're gonna have to set the bump stop to engage before the tire runs into the chassis itself. You only got about 2 inches at the most here of bump travel, so we have to really capitalize on that. Luckily, the valving in these coilovers is really dialed in for these cars, so you're not blowing through the travel for no reason. It's really controlled, and we have feel adjustable bump stops on the shocks on all 4 corners. The way this bump stop works is basically it allows you to change the height of this landing pad because the tire is about to bury itself into the chassis. We're gonna make the bump stop engage on this a lot sooner. So you got this ruler here, and you literally twist this thing out, and as you twist it out, it moves it up. It consumes some of this bump travel. It makes the bump stop land into this before the tire hits the actual chassis. Because the one thing that I hate is when you're driving a car and you have to slow down for stuff, or you have to be like super careful about who you put in the car, how many people you put in the car, because it starts to rub. I absolutely hate tires rubbing my fenders. It is like a pet peeve of mine. So that's partially why I created a feel adjustable bump stop. It obviously works wonders on the race car as well, because you can really dial in where the bump stop's engaging, but also works really good on street cars like this if you want to run super low and you want, you know, good fitment, yet you don't want your tire just rubbing everywhere. You don't want to cringe as you go over a railroad track or like a big bump. So we're going to dial those bump stops in to basically stop the tire before we get into the inner fender here, and then I'll be able to cruise this thing without slowing down too much for all the big bumps. So let's get to it. So remember, there's no spring in this corner. I went ahead and jacked up the lower control arm to the point where this thing's starting to tuck and it's starting to rub into the fender. So we're gonna go ahead and roll this fender and trial and error, put the tire back on, roll it some more to the point where it's not rubbing here at all. So this thing's looking good. I went ahead and rolled it. It's nice and thin right here now. Completely smashed that lip down. Sweet. So this thing's rolled. There's actually some space here, and we got it jacked up, and we got the feel adjustable bump stop adjusted to a point where this thing's sitting there, and this thing still spins. So I'm confident to go cruise this thing and go over some big bumps and not worry about it, because the wheel's stopping before it's hitting the inside of the chassis, before it's rubbing on the wiring that's in there. All right, so fender's rolled, springs are back on. Time to put the wheel on this thing. Well, we tried using the 10.5 KNPs that I run on the rear of my FD car, and you know, it would work, but when we take camber out and actually make it so we have a nice flat contact patch on the ground, we just get a lot of wheel poke. And I could definitely make it work if I threw a ton of negative camber at it, but that's just kind of defeating the purpose of this car for me. The solution is to run a square KNP rim on it, 19 or an 18 by 9.5 plus 22 in the front and in the rear of the car. And this is what it looks like with the suspension fully compressed. It's actually sitting on the bump stop. The bump stop's adjusted to engage before this starts to rub anything, so it actually still turns, which is awesome. And it actually looks pretty good. The rim's like pretty much flush with the actual chassis. I rolled this fender using the same technique as the front that I showed you earlier, and it made just enough clearance to where this thing rolls nice and free. And this is at full compression. This is using a screw jack, compressing this all the way up. Yeah, I'm super happy with it. And we're actually going to take a little bit camber out of it. This at full compression, it's cambered in quite a bit. At static, we had it at 1 degree negative. At static, we're going to reset it to be like half a degree negative, which will be ideal. That's usually what I run on all my comp cars, and it usually results in really good tire wear while you're drifting. So let's get this thing back on the corner scales, fine tune the rear ride height, fine tune the rear camber, and see what this thing weighs overall, and align it, square it up. Should be good to go. This thing's back on the ground. I should say on scales, actually. We just finished aligning it. We got a nice flat contact patch on the ground for this thing to have good tire wear in the rear in case we don't want to take this out to a track, digging the way the fitment's looking in the front and the way it's looking in the rear. This thing's finally aligned, so it's going to drive nice and straight. And check this out. This is what a stock S14 weighs. So 2863, and the front to rear weight balance is not the greatest. It's 56% front. That's pretty front heavy, but you know, that's what it is. All right, so let's get this thing off the scales. Really excited to take this thing for a cruise. It's finally squared up and it's finally got a proper alignment on it. So really excited to drive this thing aligned properly and with the wheels fitting the way they look. I'm excited to get out on the road and check it out.